In this second video about Camtasia, we're going to deal with its production capability. And the ability to produce videos and incorporate videos from many different sources into a single YouTube presentation is one of the tremendous advantages of using Camtasia over other screen recording programs such as Snagit. So the topics that we're going to look at today are first the very basics of creating the title slides that I have embedded in my presentation, just as an example of how to use the package. Then we'll talk a little bit about the producer interface, which is the tool that you use to actually create these full-fledged videos. We'll talk about bringing media into your presentation, and this is not only MP4 video files, it can also include a wide array of other things. In particular, image files can be used and organized on a timeline. And the timeline will be the next topic that we cover. And this is the principal tool that you use for creating videos in Camtasia Producer. And it's a stacked timeline, which means that you can have different layers which cover up each other. And this allows you to create an almost infinite number of different types of videos. And then finally, we'll talk about the process of producing a Camtasia video, which is to say getting it in a format such that it could be uploaded to YouTube or displayed on a PC or even incorporated into an Acrobat document. So we'll begin by assuming that I have made the Camtasia recordings for everything that we need, and that the next thing that I need to do is to create some title slides. Now, what I have done is I have set up my PowerPoint, so the two introductory slides, I'm going to worry about recording those later and then adding them to the presentation. So what I'm focused on right now is creating a presentation that combines title slides plus the content that I recorded. So what I will do to create the title slides is I will simply take my PowerPoint presentation, and you'll notice what I've done is I've created a slide for each item in this original topic slide. And then I will do File, Save As, and I will browse. And I've been putting all my video stuff on my D drive because I've got more room there and I don't really need OneNote for this because these are all intermediate files. And this is going to be related to part 4 because what we're going to do is we're going to do the course setup. And what I will then do is I will do a save as. And I think I'm just about off the side of the screen. You could use JPEG. I'm going to use Portable Network Graphics PNG file. I don't know if you'll be able to see that because I'm only recording part of the screen. And then I will do a save, and it's going to then ask me, do I want to save one image or all of them? And I will save all of them. And what it'll do is it'll create a folder with PNG files for each slide. So if I were to come over here and take a look at my part 4, let's just see if I can find that here. Maybe over here. Oh, sorry, that's that's where I keep all my original stuff. So we'll come over here to my local disk, Faculty Online Workshop, part 4. Now we see course setup. And you can see that I now have copies of all the slides as images. And that's all I'm going to need. And here you can see the original CamRec recordings that I'm going to combine into this presentation. So when you open Camtasia Studio, it may show you this dialog. I just prefer to work from a blank project, so I'm just going to close it. And then what I will do is I will resize the studio so it fits in the area of the screen I'm recording. Once again, when you're recording stuff, it's useful to think about the sizing. My normal default size is the one that's 720 characters long. That'll do a nice 720p on YouTube. So, okay, now we can see Camtasia, and let's just talk a little bit about the Camtasia interface. Um, there's a whole bunch of different regions of the interface, and Camtasia Studio is an incredibly powerful tool when you go into production. Um, and we're not going to cover nearly all the features of it, but let's just take a quick look at the different areas of the studio. In this area, we have a series of different tabs. The clip bin shows you what media you've dragged into the project. When you create a CamProj file, you're not actually creating any media. You're simply creating an application that identifies all the media you've brought in and any effects you want to add. It is only when you go to produce and share that you actually create a new file. So the CamProj file is just kind of an index of everything that's in your project. The library contains various resources that you may or may not have. Callouts allows you to add effects after you have completed your as part of your production. For example, in one of the early lessons, I use a call out to hide a registration number that I don't want exposed to the public. Zoom and pan is an effect that actually takes you down to the areas of the screen where action is going on. I personally find it extremely annoying, and so I don't use it, but you'll see a lot of professional animations will actually use that zoom and pan, and it does give you some activity. Audio allows you to select regions and do things like amplify the audio, reduce the audio, fade in, fade out. Transitions allows you to create transitions between segments. More gives you things like cursor effects. If you want the cursor highlighted, you can do that. Allows you to add narration, record the camera while you're doing production. It allows you to add closed captioning, and you can also add quizzes to your Camtasia production. I used to add a lot of quizzes when I was teaching programming, and it worked pretty well. I used what was called SCORM packaging, which in Blackboard allowed me to take the quiz directly to the grade book. The Achilles heel of adding quizzes to your productions is it's a real pain in the neck to edit them in the future. So ultimately what I decided to do was to keep my quizzes out of my video. The other problem with quizzes is in the past it always used Flash. Now they're adapting it so that it will be able to use HTML5, which means you may be able to do things on an iPad, but that still doesn't deal with the specific problem of creating videos which are extremely painful to edit in the future, because if you want to keep your content current, you can't be afraid of editing things. So, at any rate, those are things that you can look at in this various windows here. Normally I leave the clip bin up. Now this is what over here, this Camtasia Studio is what's known as the preview window. And the preview window basically allows you to see what the video is going to look like when it's produced. Now what you see in the preview window you can get by playing, but you can also do it, and the way you normally do it is by adjusting your position on the timeline. And the timeline is the most important area of the Camtasia interface. This is where you bring in all your content. And what the timeline does is it allows you to add a whole bunch of different tracks. And when you produce the video, all the tracks are combined together into a single, say, MP4 file. And we'll see plenty of illustrations of that as we go ahead and build this video. But you can have a very large number of tracks, and you can add screen recordings to tracks. You can add videos that you've already produced to tracks. You can add standard graphics to tracks. That's what I will be doing with the title slides. You can add callouts to your tracks. You can add quizzes and so forth. So essentially you build tracks on top of each other, and part of the production process involves combining all these tracks. And we'll take a look at working with the timeline as we now create an actual video that is used in part 2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in some media that I've already created um, for part 4, which is creating courses. So what we'll do here is we click the Import Media button, and what I'm now going to do here is go over to part 4, and you'll notice that I number everything. The course creation was the first activity or the first walkthrough in part 4, so that begins 0, 1. And then I number everything sequentially so that I know how to assemble it. So everything that begins with a 0, 1 is part of that particular content, so I will add those. And now you see these Camtasia files have appeared in here. Now I'll go to import media again, and if you saw in the first part, I did a save as to get PNG files for the different title slides. And so what I'm going to do is select those title slides. I won't use the first two because those two I am going to ultimately add at the very end when I record with my face. So these things I'm just going to use as separators. So I'm going to bring them in as well. And let's see, did I click? Yes, there we go. So you can see we've got image files and we've got the course files. Now, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to get this new course in. So I'm going to drag this down to track 1, and it's actually going to create 2 tracks because there is an audio track and the video track. Actually, the audio track involves system sounds, the system audio, and right now there isn't much system audio going on. Now I know that I recorded this at 1280 by 720, so that is what I'm going to keep it at. 1280 by 720 is also known as 720p dimensions, so it makes a lot of sense to do recordings. Like this thing is being recorded at 720p. That is going to make it nice for YouTube when I produce it. But it's also important to recognize that people will be looking at your presentations potentially in other devices besides PCs. So this is a good size, for example, for an iPad. Probably not that good for a cell phone, though the slides are fine, but as we get into the screen stuff, it's probably you need pretty good eyes to see it. But at any rate, that's the resolution I'm going to use. Okay, and that was 0, 1, part 1. And then we had part 2. So what I'm going to do is drag that down to the timeline, and I will put it at the end of the timeline over here. But what I'm going to do is shrink the timeline a little bit. So this thing allows you to zoom out, just makes it a little easier to get started here. So we'll drag this thing down to track 1. And you can select things. For example, here, both of these are selected. I'm going to move it right up to the track. Okay. Then I'm going to move this one, content types, down to this track, bring it up close, take part 4, which I think, notice I tried to name these things in a way that would make it possible to reconstruct them at the end. And now we'll come over here. And okay, so now we've got essentially all these tracks together. And so when I produce it, what it's going to take, it looks like it's going to be about a 15-minute video. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some separators just to remind me of what I'm doing here. So the create course, and I'll just drag this down to the timeline, but I'm going to have to create a new track, and then I'm going to have to do some moving. So what I'll do is I'll drag this image down to the timeline, and the default size for these things is 5 seconds. So now I'm going to expand this timeline a little bit so I can see it. I'll move this up over to the end. Notice now this has appeared in the preview window, and then what I'm going to do is select these two tracks and I will drag them. Oh, that's right, I can't do that. I have to start from the end. So we gotta shrink this down again. Yeah, because it won't move everything over until there's probably a way to select it so it all moves over, but it's easier just to drag this one out. This was the syllabus one. So what we'll do is we'll drag the syllabus down to this timeline, give it enough room. Notice that little yellow line showed me what was called snapping. Okay, so we'll drag this one here. And we may have to do a little bit more editing here, and so we'll take the home page. And notice, because I named these things in a way that was sort of understandable, now that might have actually expanded it, so I have to be careful here. Okay, well, we'll adjust these things later. Part of this is to show you the interface. Now what we'll do is we'll take the, let's see, the page editor. I'm probably going to have to split a track and insert that in there. So what I'm just going to do for now, the time being, is put the content types here. Here, we'll zoom in a little bit. Now we got a little more room. Put that there. And all I'm doing is I'm making space for all these things. And I will be able to select the whole track and move it around. But for the time being, we'll make some space here. Okay, and then course details. Okay. Then drag this over here. And then we'll put the create course. Well, I guess I already grabbed the create course there. So now what I can do is I can probably select these two. Let's see, we'll see if I can. There's probably a better way of doing this, but I usually don't have to narrate while I'm doing these things. So now we'll select. I'm just trying to select everything so I can move it all at the same time. Okay, so now we drag these. Oh, I've already got this one, so I'll unselect that. And now I should be able to move everything over. There we go. Okay, so now what I have is a timeline that is populated. And what I will now do is take a look at the recording and see if I need to do any cleanup. So now that we've added the videos in and the markers in, what we'll do is we'll just take a look at some of the things that you might end up wanting to do. Now, a very important thing here is this marker here, which is basically, you'll notice as I move it, what appears in the preview window changes. And this green marker and red marker can be used to make selections. And when you make selections, you can cut them out. You can break a video into two pieces so that you might, for example, add a title slide or do something between the pieces, which I often find myself doing. You can copy segments of the video, replace them. And as I mentioned, you can also do things like add tracks. So if I wanted to create a musical background track, I could add the track and put in some music behind the video, and then when I produced it, it would be there. But we're not going to get anything that fancy here. I'm just going to show you now how this works. So now we'll need some system audio. So what I will do is I'll start playing, and the default size for for an image, if you drag it in, is 5 seconds, and you can see the timing here, and you can actually adjust the size. So creating a new course shell is quite easy. The first thing I will do is I will log into Canvas from my USF. So you can hear the system audio. Now, one of the things that you can do on the timeline is you can see the sound levels. And so one of the things that you might do, for example, if you make a mistake, one of the things you can do is to just be silent for 2 or 3 seconds. What'll happen then is you'll notice a big gap on the time line, and you will be able to select that and knock it out. Now, I don't know whether this gap is just waiting for something to happen on the screen or whether it's significant. So let's play through it and see what happens. Publicly available, and then I will click on Create Course. Okay, I would leave that here, and now we have, because this is something that the user is going to experience a certain delay, so I don't want them to be surprised. Now, when you start fine-tuning editing videos, a process that can be done very quickly ends up taking a very long time. So you'll find in this course, given that Canvas is constantly changing and interfaces are changing, I don't see that there's much value to my trying to make lots and lots of video changes. So as a result, there's a certain amount of roughness in the content. And this is a trade-off. You can get your content very pure if you want to spend a real long time on it, or you can accept quick and dirty. I actually published an article in the Decision Sciences Journal of Innovative Education called Quick and Dirty Multimedia, so you know where I stand on this. All right, so let's see. What I'm going to do is just drag through the timeline and see if there's anything that I find particularly concerning here. No, I think we're doing okay. Now, you'll notice over here that there's a little white space here. This particular PNG actually is a little bit longer than the others because I actually dragged it out. Now, I'd like to say that was intentional, but it actually isn't. However, it is something I can use to demonstrate. So first off, what I will do is just verify what's going on here, that this is all relevant. By the time you look at this video, there will be a somewhat simpler, more self-explanatory process in place. So as you'll notice, this particular PNG file, basically title slide, got spaced a little bit, and that was not intentional, but I will use it to illustrate another capability, which is the callout. Originally, when I planned to do the recording, I was just going to have a session specifically on the page editor. But as it turns out, as I did the home page and the syllabus, they get kind of mixed in, so there's no steady thing. But since I have that listed on the slides as a topic, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a call out. And first off, maybe I'll expand the timeline a little bit so it's a little easier to work with. And then I'll come over to the call out window, and maybe I'll just use this rounded rectangle, and you'll notice what you now see is a rectangle here, and a new track has been formed. So what I will then do is I will scroll up, and in here what I will do is illustrates the page editor. Then I'll select it in bold, and then what I can do is I can drag this down, maybe widen it a little bit, and because it's wider, I can actually change the font to something more visible. We'll put bold there. And then what I can do is I can take this, you'll notice there's a fade in, and then there's a fade out. And so now let's go over here back to this thing, and now we'll play it in the timeline that I just described. Notice how it shows the call out. Now the call out disappears, and now we move into the process for customizing the home page in Canvas. So the final thing that I want to illustrate is the production, because all of this stuff that I have been doing, and let me just bring this thing down so it's a little bit more manageable. All of this stuff that I have been doing here is defining what the 17-minute video is going to look like. I know it's 17 minutes because it looks like about 17 minutes on the timeline there. It hasn't actually created the video. So the production process takes this definition, which includes all of these things. And before I go into production, it looks like this thing is way too long. So let me just zoom in, and this is an example of the type of thing that we might want to do. We'll zoom in and maybe bring this thing down to 5 seconds, which is the normal. Notice I can see the time. Okay. Okay, then we got 5 seconds, and then we can drag these things over since there's no reason to have people sitting around. So now we'll just, now it's time to produce it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save the project. And what we'll do is we'll save the project. This is something that is in part 2. So I'm going to go over here to part 2. And I will call this 02. Because this is the second sequence, and we'll just call this content. Because when I produce this, it's not going to have the slides with my face on it and stuff like that. So I'm actually going to take the file produced from this and then turn that into the actual file that will be provided. So what I'll now do is I will save this. And it's warning me that saving the project doesn't actually save the doesn't actually produce it, and that's correct. So what I now need to do is actually do a production. So I will go over here into produce and share. And what I am going to do here is I am going to select an MP4 only, because I don't want the video player. And so what we'll do is I think I'll go into custom production settings. I think same size MP4 is actually one I've already created, but we'll go into custom production settings, MP4, which is the standard format, works for YouTube and everything else. We're not going to produce it with a controller because the controller, changes the size, and when you use YouTube, you don't need a controller. The size, we're going to have 1280 by 720, the standard. The video settings are fine. The audio settings are fine. Okay, we'll move on. We're not going to package it as a SCORM file. There's no reason to. I can add author and copyright information, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to worry about watermark. And now it's actually asking me where I want to produce this video. And for the time being, the 02 content is fine when I know I'm in part 2, but what I will do is put 02. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the same folder, just so that I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the folders, and it's really important to figure out where all your stuff is supposed to go, because if you don't, you're going to have problems. So we go to part 2, and this way I will know that it's associated with part 2, and I'll be able to add it when I create a new project. So now I'm going to do a save, and now I'm ready to finish. I don't need the subfolders. I don't show production results. And so when I click finish, it's going to start to render the project. And the rendering process can take almost as long as the video. It depends on how fast your machine is. So what I will do is pause until the rendering process is almost done. So the rendering is just about done. And when it ends, what will happen is it will give you a production results. It tells me about the file that has been created. And then what it should do is open up a sample of it if I asked it to, but apparently I did not ask it to. So what we can do is we can go into the folder where it was created, which is not this folder. Let's try. We'll go over here to the D drive. I think I put it in part 2. And you see this content MP4, and you can see the project that I created. If I bring this up, then what will happen is we should see here. I'm going to bring it over here so you can see it. So creating a new course shell is quite easy. The first thing I will do is I will log into Canvas. So I'll pause it and close it because it produced properly. And what I will then do is I will take that and put the headshots with the title slides in front of it, creating a new project, and that new project and the new production will be what I actually use within the text and within the online website.